In the last lecture, we saw what is meant by a vulnerability assessment test. Now, in this video, we are going to learn how these tests are performed. So, four steps are used basically in VAPT. So, here is a four-step method to start an effective vulnerability assessment process using any automated tool or manual tools, which we are going to see a few minutes after. So, the first phase is always the initial assessment. In this phase, we have to identify the assets and define the risk and critical value for each device based on the client input, such as a security assessment vulnerability scanner. It's important to identify at least the importance of the device that you have on your network, or at least the devices that will test. It is also important to understand if the device or the devices can be accessed by any member of your company, such as a public computer, or just administrators and authorized users. You have to know who is accessing this computer before you move on to test those devices. Then understand the strategic factors and have a clear understanding of details including risk appetite, risk tolerance level, risk mitigation practices and policies for each device, residual risk treatment, countermeasures for each device or service, and business impact analysis. The second phase is a system baseline definition. Second, gather information about the systems before doing any test. It is you have to make sure that you know what are you going to test. It's not a black box pen testing where you do not know anything about the organization. Generally, VAPTs or the penetration testers who perform vulnerability assessments have a clear idea of how the systems in a particular that organization is going to work. At least review if the device has open ports, processes and services that shouldn't be opened. Also understand the approved drivers and the softwares and the basic configuration of each device. If the device is a perimeter device, it shouldn't have a default administrator username configured. I just gave an example. Try to perform a banner grabbing or learn what kind of public information should be accessible based on the configuration baseline. Sometimes it's possible that the systems administrator is dumb enough that he just sets off random flags on, and that makes a hell lot of information available over the internet, and that really makes a great critical security breach or security exploit for attackers to gain information about the system. So you have to constantly ask questions. Does this device send logs into the security information and image management platform, that is SIEM? Are there logs at least stored in a central repository? Then gather public information and vulnerabilities regarding the device platform, version, vendor, and other relevant skills. So basically, it's information gathering. You have to gather up your bags, you have to fill your bags with information, and then you have to proceed. With lots of information in your hand, it becomes quite easy to, find the vulnerabilities. And it is also time consuming before actually exploiting any vulnerability. Then third is the perform vulnerability scan. This is the most important phase of any assessment. We have to use the right policy on your scanner to accomplish the desired results. Now, what is a policy? We are going to see the policy, how to write a policy, how to define a policy in a few lectures on the Nessus tool, in which we are going to write some policies for network scanning, for port scanning, for device scanning. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. You have to just focus on what we are going to teach. Prior to starting the vulnerability scan, look for any compliance requirements based on your company's posture and businesses, and know the best time and date to perform the scan. It's important to recognize the client industry context and determine if the scan can be performed all at once or if a segmentation is needed. You cannot perform the scan. Sometimes it becomes tedious to perform the scan in one go. It becomes extremely difficult because if system is large, if the company's data servers are very huge, then you cannot perform a single scan in a whole stretch. You have to divide your scans in segments. For the best results, use related tools and plugins on the vulnerability assessment platforms, such as you can see these tools, STAT, which scans multiple systems in the network, then TARA, that is Tiger Analytical Research Assistant, then Popular Ports, QuickScan, then Kane Enable, which recovers passwords by sniffing network cracking HTTP passwords. Metasploit, it is a very useful framework for penetration testers. Then these are the network based, that is Cisco Scanner, Wireshark, Nmap, Nessus. Now Nessus is a popular automated tool used in the industries nowadays. But one major disadvantage of automated tools is that automated tools sometimes result into false positives. False positives means the vulnerabilities which may not be present on the system, but it is shown in the scanner. So it's always a good practice to manually test those vulnerabilities. A good penetration tester always tests the vulnerabilities which are being shown in the reports. And then you have to look for payment card industry data security standard, that is PCI DSS, preparation of applications, HIPAA Act. In case you need to perform a manual scan for the critical assets to ensure the best results, be sure to configure the credentials on the scanner to perform a better and deeper vulnerability assessment. So it is better if you share the credentials with your team. And finally, the last phase is the vulnerability assessment report creation. Now, see, if you are a penetration tester, you may carry out certain results, but your client is not an ethical hacker. He's not from this team. He's not from this field. So you have to write a document so that your client or the company in which you're doing the penetration test should get a clear idea, should understand what you have exactly done and what is the severity of the vulnerabilities available in their system. So the fourth and the most important step is the report creation. So pay attention to the details and then try to add extra value on the recommendations phase to get real value from the final report. Add recommendations based on the initial assessment goals. Also add risk mitigation techniques based on the criticalness of the assets and results. Try to add findings related to any possible gap between the results and the system baseline definition. It's your job to mention every detail that you have found out which can be considered as a critical vulnerability. So make sure you add everything, give a clear idea of what you have done, and you can also rate their systems on a based scale to tell them how secure is the system. However, it's important to keep the following details in mind and realize that high and medium vulnerabilities should have a detailed report which includes the name of the vulnerability, date of discovery, the score based on common vulnerabilities and exposure databases, that is CVE. Now, what is a score? We are also going to see that. A detailed description of the vulnerability, details regarding the affected systems, details regarding the process to correct the vulnerability, a proof of concept if possible. So what is a proof of concept? A proof of concept is a video or a short demonstration to show to the client that there is an actual vulnerability present on the system. You have to show him. A blank field for the owner of the vulnerability, the time to correct, the next revision, and the countermeasures between the final solution. So armed with this basic list when performing a assessment, the recommendations phase will reflect a complete understanding of the security posture in all the different aspects of the process. It will also deliver a better outcome for something that in most cases is just a compliance tool. So now we know what is exactly vulnerability assessment, how it is performed, why it is important, which tools are used. We will also recommend a few articles, a few resources. If you are interested in further reading, you can go through that. But I would recommend you first complete this course. In the next courses, we are going to go into deep structure of assessments. So stay tuned, and in the next lecture, we are going to see if you can recollect the CIA triad. So all the best for the next lecture, and I hope we are constantly giving you exams, the multiple choice questions that we have added. Stay tuned and all the best.